Welcome to Breaking Ties, Is Divorce the Answer? This is your go-to source for practical advice and support when considering if a divorce is the right answer for you. Join us each weekday for a quick chat where we'll uncover a variety of topics such as child custody, property division, and self-care. Together, we'll explore the emotional, financial, and legal aspects of divorce and help you find the best path forward for you and your family. Here is your host and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst professional, Mike Fulkerson.
Welcome to the Breaking Ties interview series, where we talk with a professional who assists those in getting through the divorce process and answers many of the common questions you may have. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional. And with me today is Dr. Stephanie Bielendorf. Now, Dr. B is a pediatric and prenatal specialist with Select Health Chiropractic in St. Charles, Illinois. And this really is going to be a great resource for us on the show, as she knows many things on health and wellness, especially during a challenging time such as divorce. Welcome, Dr. B.
Thanks for having me. I hope that I can help. Yeah, I hope I can help some people, especially in the health world, because it definitely takes a toll during divorce. I should know. Unfortunately, I've been there. So.
Yes, I know you have. As my boys and I we've seen you for, well over 10 years. So it's been a very insightful time, as well as I learn a few things about my health and well-being.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. It's been a great hot minute, but definitely over a decade. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, one of the first questions that kind of comes up is, chiropractic. There's a lot of different places out there. People see them as they drive down the road, I'm sure, but perhaps they're not entirely sure of the benefits that chiropractic has for all people in just different walks of life. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, especially with us being, pediatric and prenatal specialists, a lot of times we get the question asked to us, why would you see somebody at such a young age? And I think really what it amounts to is stress takes a toll on anybody at any point in their life. And it's easy to think or look at it from an adult perspective, right? Because you're like, okay, I feel the stress, I see the stress, you start to see the stress lines maybe externally, but internally we definitely can feel the stress. And chiropractors actually, we have a term called subluxation, and all that basically means is stress stuck in our bodies. And that's why we have a job. People don't always know when they come in why they feel so good when they leave, but it's really cool if you can sit here and watch. I mean, it's really cool to be a fly on the wall and sit in a chiropractor's office, because people come in sometimes very grumpy. I love our patients, so please don't take that the wrong way. If you're watching, I love you. I have my grumpy days too. And then they come in or happy, but they always tend to leave just so much better. Again, back to the idea of taking care of a baby. Why would you take care of, or I get this all the time, crack a baby? Well, first and foremost, we don't crack anybody. Nobody wants that. But the adjustment itself does cause that audible sound that we hear in adults. It's called cavitation. So that's just the release of gas between the joint spaces. And sometimes it's a little louder and sometimes it's a little softer. Sometimes our patients think that when you get adjusted that, if you get a really loud noise that it's, oh, that was a great adjustment. And the reality is if you fart quiet or you fart loud, sometimes it feels just as good. So anyways, bad analogy, but so we don't crack babies. We use something called neural tonal. So we just find those areas of stress stuck in a baby. We adjust those areas, and it really does help with all different kinds of things. Everything from digestive issues, colic, torticollis. We see a lot of babies for that. So really it's that whole walk of life. So whether we have the little tiny people or, somebody that's been and lived a lot of life, they all get benefit from the chiropractic care itself. And we'll talk obviously a little more too about how that can help people in divorce situations and why it helps.
Yes, yeah, that'll be coming up on a future episode as we've got Dr. B with us all week this week, which is fantastic. And actually, here an interesting question that has arose when I talk to people has been a lot of times we think of chiropractic as easing pain, and it does some of that. But what can it help with aside from that we may not even think about?
So it's interesting, and actually we have our little visual here. We call her Carol, thanks to our awesome staff, but it shows the autonomic nervous system. And only approximately 10% of your nerve fibers are even there for pain. So we would think chiropractic is pain based or pain driven because it's something that drives somebody to a point that they're like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I'm uncomfortable. And so they come in. But you'd be surprised, especially now. I think people are starting to become more in tune with their bodies. And it really is driving a wellness based model because, again, 10% of those nerve fibers are controlling the pain. The other 90% controls every vital function within your body. So, your digestion, your rest wake cycles, your cardiac, your your cardiac input output, your lungs, everything is controlled, even down to fertility, which is why we actually see a lot of moms for infertility issues. Because if
Wow.
you don't have a balanced nervous system, you're stressed out. It's a primitive thing. Think about it. If you can't think primitively, like caveman stuff, it's kind of wild to think that way. But if you're going to have a baby or be pregnant, you need to be in a calm state. You can't be running from dinosaurs and that's primitive, but it's the same idea, and that's how our autonomic nervous system works. That's the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic response.
Yeah, wow, that is fantastic information. Appreciate you sharing that with us, and I'm looking forward to our future questions as this is going to actually conclude day one of the interview, and you're going to want to join us tomorrow. I mean, these are cool responses to just information. I don't even know all this stuff, and I've been going to see Dr. B for well over a decade, and so we're going to continue this discussion tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week on chiropractic, wellness, and divorce. And Dr. B and I would like to thank you for joining us today on the Breaking Ties interview series. Should you have any questions for Dr. B, I'm going to include her information in the description for the podcast, so you're free to reach out and contact her with questions that you may have as well. Now, remember, divorce is not the end of your story. It is the start of your next great chapter. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Hi, and welcome to day 2 of the Breaking Ties interview series, where we talk with a professional who assists those getting through the divorce process and answers many of the questions that are common that perhaps you haven't had a chance to ask anyone. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional. And back with me today is Dr. Stephanie Bielendorf. And for those who weren't here with us yesterday, Dr. B is a pediatric and prenatal specialist with Select Health Chiropractic in St. Charles, Illinois. And we're going to go over some, health and wellness questions. For our listeners that did miss yesterday's episode, I would, suggest you go back and take a listen to that because every day's questions are going to be different. And this will give you an opportunity to learn more about health and wellness as we navigate the divorce process. Welcome back, Dr. B. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, good to see you again. I'm so interested in today's topic as well as the next few days that we have going on because these questions are just I just find them so insightful and interesting. As you and I have both been through the divorce process, so you can we can relate on that level.
I can't really say if that's fortunately or unfortunately, but either way, we're here today and happy individuals. So there is a rainbow on the other side.
Absolutely. So today we're going to look at kind of a three-part type of question. And we're going to start with, as people are considering getting a divorce, I mean, it's really challenging. Just even thinking about it makes people stress up and tense. So why would getting adjusted while you're considering getting a divorce helpful?
Well, I think the big question overall, and not just getting adjusted, but why would you want self care in general while you're considering getting a divorce? And chiropractic care definitely falls into that. And we can talk a bit about that too a little later, or maybe in a future episode. But really, self-care becomes imperative because unfortunately throughout a marriage, when you're getting ready to, or you even think that there's a potential that there's a divorce. I mean, I don't know about you, Mike, but I don't believe I've ever met anybody that's in a happy marriage that says I'm considering divorce.
This is true.
So that means right then and there that there is a plethora of stress. And a lot of times we put it inside because, let's face it, we're communicative for a long point into our marriage. And then if we're considering divorce, usually that's when communication tends to be either broken or breaking down, or we're in therapy. So we're talking about it there, and therapy is great. I went through 5 years of it myself. Thank you to everybody that's taking care of me in that process. But we tend to just then put it all inside. And then if we're uncertain, that just adds another level of stress. I guess the beauty of getting adjusted while you're considering divorce is that it helps balance your autonomic nervous system. Studies have shown that when you get adjusted, it affects directly the vagus nerve, which is your rest and digest nerve. So there's two parts to your autonomic nervous system. There's the fight and flight, and there's your rest and digest. So we want to be in a more restful state when we're going through a divorce. Naturally, our sympathetic nervous system is going to be more online. But when we adjust you, or when a chiropractor, or a neurologically based chiropractor, that's important too, adjusts you, it brings that vagus nerve back online. So it's like your foot's on the gas pedal and you're doing 100 miles an hour. And then divorce just pushes that pedal down further. And when you can get the vagus nerve online through an adjustment naturally, and there's something else more interesting on that too, and I'll speak to that in just a second, but when you can get that back online naturally, it just calms you down. It's like, having a glass of wine or whatever you like, or getting a good massage, or anything that just calms you down. And that calm feeling comes over you. And a lot of times people that walk into our practice or into our office don't even know that's what's happening to them. But they just leave feeling better.
Right.
There's some irony in that. And real quick, I'm just going to say it real fast. The pharmaceutical industry actually wanted to, and I don't know if they actually produced it or not, but they wanted to make a vagal nerve stimulator and implant it into our bodies. Wild, true, look it up. But the reality is that chiropractors can do that naturally and not give
that is a wild fun fact. Wow.
No, thank you.
Now, you've seen, and helped many people. So I was kind of wondering if you notice, we talked about the considering a divorce and how stressful that is and the changes. Have you noticed any differences between that level and, say, someone who's going through the process and then finishes the process?
Yeah. So going through the process, I think at least at that point, you've made decisions. So I feel, and I'm speaking unfortunately again, but fortunately, I have to say it from experience, that once you know the path, I do think it tends to clear your head a little better. I see, and I've seen over the years, patients that have struggled and actually confided in me, because a big part of what we do in this practice isn't just people become family here. Our patients become family. And so they ask me, hey, doc, who can I get to help me with this? Or do you know anybody to navigate? Or I've had this before. Do you got a good divorce attorney? So yeah, here we are. So they've made a decision, and I think that really does help with the stress level. But then there's this downside, because as we get that nervous system to calm down a little bit, a lot of times, because we've been stuck so high in that sympathetic dominant state, naturally our body wants to stay there. So we're kind of fighting that, and we want to come down and be more parasympathetic or more relaxed. Again, that's back to the vagus nerve. And that's what we really want to see happening. But our bodies, it's like, hey, the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, however many years you've been going through it, it's been absolutely chaotic. And now we have this big thing ahead of us, which is a divorce. And so we need to stay up here. So I think in this phase, we do tend to kind of come down a little bit, just because we're like, okay, we made a decision, but we're going to come down just a little bit. But what's great is when you get adjusted and you have somebody helping with that vagal nerve stimulation, then you're going to be able to not have those highs and lows so much. So I think that's where that tends to be, that's the difference.
Right. Yeah. And so then I would say, probably from my own experience, once you get actually through the process, that stress level comes down a little more. There's still, a little uncertainty and stuff, but would you agree that, that stress level then takes another step down at that stage?
It does. And at this point, if you haven't sought care at this point, you really want to. And it's not just for the chiropractic portion. Self-care is huge. And I think when you're prior to a divorce and you're in a divorce, you really don't focus on yourself. And I'm sure that there's tons of listeners out there that could relate to that, or maybe people considering or in the middle of it. On the other side, after your divorce, that's the time that you need to take care of you. So if you didn't get chiropractic care, if you didn't do your daily meditation, if you didn't start working out, if you didn't start eating healthy, if you didn't do anything for yourself, like now is the time.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I think, working on yourself, giving yourself some stress-free time, mindfulness, all of it plays a really great role in just who you are as a person, and giving you the foresight to, kind of think and be creative and be who you want to be after the divorce is finalized. So this concludes our second day of the interview. More great information. Oh my gosh, that was really good. I would like to let our listeners know that you're going to want to join us again tomorrow as we continue our discussion on chiropractic wellness and divorce with Dr. B. And we would both like to thank you for joining us today on this episode of Breaking Ties interview series. Should you have any questions for Dr. B, her information will be in the description. You can reach out to her and contact her. She is always happy to assist any way she can. And remember that divorce is not the end of your story. It is the start of your next great chapter. And we will see you tomorrow. Hi, and welcome back to day 3 of the Breaking Ties interview series, where we talk with a professional who assists those going through the divorce process and answer many of the common questions you might have. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional. And with me back again today for day number 3 is Dr. Stephanie Bielendorf. Now, Dr. B is a pediatric and prenatal specialist with Select Health Chiropractic in St. Charles, Illinois, and mine and my kids' personal chiropractor. And we discuss many health and wellness questions over the week here. So if you haven't actually looked at the previous couple days, you want to go back and listen to those, because every day is different with Dr. B and the questions are different. So feel free to go back and review those. And then we're going to have a couple more coming up in the future. Welcome back, Dr. B. How are you?
Thank you. I had to laugh a little bit. You are absolutely correct. Every day is different. Coming from a mom of 5.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's not a dull moment in your place, that's for sure.
Well, any parent can relate with that. That's for sure.
Yes, but parenting is one of those things where if you have more, you don't get any cost breaks or any other things.
No benefits. Just stop at one. No.
That's right. There's no value add for more kids.
Hopefully my kids don't hear this.
Yeah, we have 4 big teenage boys roaming through, so it's you just every day is always something different, and it always has some exciting features to it.
You got the boy clan, I got the girl clan. I don't know. I think
oh goodness. So this week we've been discussing many different facets of health and wellness with regards to chiropractic and kids and little kids and divorce and stuff. And so what's interesting though, I think, is there are other services that are available that your practice offers, and other things you suggest to do, whether you're going through the divorce process or you're coming out of the divorce process. And so I was interested in kind of learning some of these key pieces that you like to share with people as far as making them more balanced.
Whew, we could do a very, very long segment on this, but let's be real. People have busy lives. So yeah, there's a ton that people can do. And I think I had mentioned in one of our prior talks that really self-care is just huge. And there's not enough of it. People need to spend more time, certainly after divorce, because it's time to care for yourself. So there's some things that our practice offers. There's some things I suggest outside of the practice, and I've got good resources for everything locally. And I hope even if somebody's watching from far away, that some of this information would be good for them as well. Number one, and this is not within the practice, we'll start outside of the practice and we'll work our way in. Definitely look for somebody that can maybe put you through some good counseling. That really does help. Everybody needs counseling at some level. It's just a question of when and how much counseling. But that helped me a lot. I actually spent about 5 years through my divorce process, prior to, during, and after my divorce, getting counseling. So that helped me a ton. It helped me work through some things. There's a lot of questions, and I think we alluded to that in one of our prior episodes, but there's a lot of questions that you have, especially in the earlier phases prior to divorce and going through divorce, that pop up along the way. And a lot of times the best result is going inward and really working on yourself. And a good way to do that is through counseling. So I highly recommend that. Morning meditation, affirmations, and writing, journaling. So that's another great way to really help work on your inner being and get you through the process before, during, and then, of course, afterwards. And then you can really rediscover yourself. So writing is great. Picking up a new hobby. Something that maybe you've always wanted to do, and maybe your ex-husband or ex-wife told you that you were stupid for wanting to do that, right? Ever had that happen? I sure the heck did. So, picking up something that you wanted to try that maybe you were a little bit afraid to try, that gives you kind of a new revival, if you will. So you're becoming a new person, a different person for the better, but you're becoming a new person. So those are some of the things that I did that really seemed to help. I took up some really crazy things like kite surfing, something I always wanted to do. So why not? Kite surfing in Key Biscayne, let me tell you. So that's outside of the practice and things you can do. As far as inside of the practice, we do offer some nutraceutical help. That's just supplementation. Things that help the adrenal glands are particularly good because your adrenal glands are your stress glands. As you can tell, that those are probably really worn after some given amount of time going prior to, going through, and after divorce. So we can really help with that. Mineral support. A lot of times when your adrenal glands are stressed, our body just tends to push out some of the minerals. So a good mineral support. So it's case by case. So I can help with that. I spent a few years of the last 15 doing a lot of that. So I have some wherewithal for that. So, and I add that into your wellness program. So that's kind of nice. And then we have something called an M-Sculpt Neo. I actually came across it a few years ago. I was interested after my divorce and my fifth child. I was interested in getting back into shape. I had my fifth baby after the age of 35, and it is much different than the age of 25 or 30. I was considered a geriatric pregnancy. Let me tell you. And now I know why they called it a geriatric pregnancy. So I did, I picked this up because I had suffered with diastasis rectus. That's just the separation in your abdominal muscles, whether you have, and this is not just for women, so we'll get to the guy portion of this in just a second, but for the ladies out there that have had either big babies or multiple pregnancies, the ab separation oftentimes will cause some issues over time. I like to lift, so long and the short of it is I ended up with a hernia, and so I was looking for natural ways to help with that. The M-Sculpt Neo also reduces fat in the area by 30%, so it's as good as liposuction. So I've done some sculpting sessions on my own abdominal area. It's helped a ton. I've also done my own butt and several people's, and it just makes you feel good, right? You're going back out into the dating world again and all those things. So we've had a lot of, people going through divorce and post-divorce that come in for that treatment as well. And guys can get it too. If you have any, stubborn belly fat, unfortunately, you lucky gentlemen, you guys do a little better than even us ladies. I think it's probably a higher percentage than 30% because a couple of sessions on that bad boy, and you guys are looking pretty darn good.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right in the sense of, early on the therapy thing. I mean, I did therapy. I'm a big proponent of talk therapy as well. Just a safe space to share your thoughts, ideas, puzzle through things, and then process and get through stuff as well. And then, yeah, right on as well as far as exercise and looking different and better as far as who you want to be and how you want to get there. If there was a magic pill, I'm pretty sure everybody would be taking it, but there's not. So you got to find your right combination of components that work for your body. And so, yeah, fantastic information. I appreciate you sharing that with our listeners.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. This is honestly, it's become one of my passions to help people through this because I've been through it, and it's, you don't really get married thinking that you're going to end up not.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you and I share that. I mean, that's the whole reason I got my divorce certification for a financial analyst, was just to help people through the process and hopefully make it a little better and smoother for them than it was when I went through it, kind of thing.
Sure. Well, you do a great job of it. I mean, I can attest to that. So I've known you for a long time.
Well, thank you. Well, we've made it through another day. So this is going to wrap up the third day of our interview. I want to invite everybody to join us tomorrow as we get into another new topic with Dr. B and some more great information on chiropractic, wellness, and divorce and how it kind of ties together. Dr. B and I would like to thank you for joining us today on this episode of Breaking Ties, the interview series. Should you have any questions for Dr. B, we're going to have that over in the description so you can reach out to her and talk to her and chat with her and find out what she can do to give you a hand. Keep in mind, divorce is not the end of your story. It is the start of your next great chapter. And with that, we will see you tomorrow. Take care. Hi, and welcome back to the fourth day of the Breaking Ties interview series, where we're talking with professionals who assist those in getting through the divorce process and answer questions on many common thoughts that we have had along the way. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional, and I have the pleasure of being with Dr. Stephanie Bielendorf today. Dr. B is basically a prenatal and pediatric specialist at Select Health Chiropractic in St. Charles, Illinois, and just a wealth of knowledge with regards to health, wellness, and even the divorce process, as she will tell you she's been through it herself. And keep in mind, if you haven't joined us for the earlier part of this week, this is part 4 of 5. And so you're going to want to go back and check out the other episodes of the series because we went over different questions. So today's question is not the same as we had the rest of the week. And then tomorrow we're going to wrap this up. So you're going to want to come back then as well. Welcome back, Dr. B. Great to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Mike. It's good to be here.
Excellent. Love it. So I tell you, I appreciate all the great information you've been sharing with the listeners. And, I've been learning myself and just enjoying it. I hope you've found it to be beneficial as well.
Oh, this has been awesome. I love helping people. That's my calling. And, unfortunately, but fortunately, as I've mentioned before, I went through divorce, and the reality is it's one more facet that I get to help people in. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Yeah. And, I always think, a lot of times people think of divorce and it's just the husband and the wife and they're going through the process. But the reality is if you have children, they're right there, right next to you. They're seeing things, they're hearing things, so you really want to pay attention to them as well. And when it comes to the health and wellness during the divorce process, I know I brought my kids to see you, but what advice would you have for other parents out there with regards to helping their children through the process?
Yeah, that one definitely hits home with me. I got to see kind of the full spectrum of the differences in each child, and how they react or how they go through the process themselves. One of my daughters, our oldest daughter in common, definitely struggled quite a bit with the whole idea of us not being together and the whole newness of everything. So it was definitely a big stress. And as you mentioned, they see things, they hear things. She became hyper vigilant, and inquisitive, wanted to know why. That was kind of her big thing. And actually, as I found out later, was, if I was on the phone with attorneys or all the things you have to go through, she would stand at the door and she was listening. And the things that you try to protect your kids from, sometimes you can't always, even if you're a good parent. I mean, we're human. So yeah, that was a process. And it becomes particularly difficult if the child has any struggles to begin with. So we see a lot of kids with neurological issues, everything from sensory to a processing disorder. You may or may not have heard of that. ADD, ADHD, so focus issues, kids with autism, but anything pretty much you can think from a neurological standpoint or a sensory standpoint, we see kids on all different spectrums. And so those kids particularly or if they're already having sleep issues or they're already having other issues, add a whole heap of stress on top of that, of going through the process of uncertainty, not knowing, a lot of times we try to protect them and then that makes it harder on them, right? Because they're really going, where am I going to live? What are we going to do? They just know that mom and dad are getting divorced. Especially the real smart ones. A lot of times the smart ones, I swear to God to you, intelligence and some of those sensory things, they run hand in hand. Because it's just heightened awareness. It's a neurological thing. I myself have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD at a young age, so I'm very compassionate to that. Thank goodness for my chiropractors because they have helped me tremendously. They wanted to medicate me in second grade. So at a young age, just like a lot of these kiddos, so you see a kid that already has challenges or maybe a kid that doesn't, and then they become more challenging, whether it's behavioral or anything across the board. So chiropractic really does help with that because what it does is, again, if you go back to some of those previous episodes, we talked about the vagus nerve. And so there's two parts to your autonomic nervous system. You have your parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. And then you have your sympathetic. You want to have a nice balance between the two. Obviously, if you want to have some reaction to stress. If you don't, that's not good. If a tiger comes to eat you, you want to be able to get away. But you also want to be able to calm down, relax, rest, sleep, and digest your food. So that balance is very imperative to a healthy functioning adult, but also child. And what's great is when you get adjusted, it stimulates that vagus nerve and it brings your parasympathetic nervous system back online. So then you have that more calming effect, which is very important for anybody. But think about it, especially for those kids with sensory issues. And then you add stress on top of it of divorce. So, yeah.
Yeah, you bring up some really great points in there with regards to kids and how they are going to process and what they look for. And really, I would say probably one of the biggest takeaways is the fact that every kid is different. You just can't go, oh, well, my kids will respond this way. No, one kid will respond one way, another kid another way, and the third kid even differently. And that might require multiple ways of therapy and stuff too. Some might do talk therapy, some might do exercise, some might see the chiropractor and health and wellness route with meditation and stuff. So you just kind of got to watch and learn from your kids themselves to see exactly, where you can help them, I think. So, but I'm definitely, like I said, been an advocate of chiropractic. My boy's been going there for a long time. They play football. I felt like it was important there. And, I always stress to them to continue it on as they get older kind of thing. So, yeah, great episode, Dr. B. I appreciate all the information that you provided. And this is 4 of 5. We're almost home free. So I would like to invite all our listeners to look us up again tomorrow. Check out that episode as we hit the last and final topic of the week. And you're going to learn some great stuff when Dr. B comes back. So we would like to thank you for joining us today. If you need to reach out to Dr. B, I'm going to have her contact information over in the description. So feel free to drop her a line in any way you feel comfortable. And I know she's going to do a great job. Remember, divorce is not the end of your story. It is the start of your next great chapter. And with that, we will see you tomorrow. Take care. Hello, and welcome to the 5th and final day of the week-long Breaking Ties interview series, where we've been talking with a professional who assists those in getting through the divorce process, and they answer many common questions that we have that we may not have answers to. I'm your host, Mike Fulkerson, financial advisor and certified divorce financial analyst professional. And with me, I am speaking of Dr. Stephanie Bielendorf. Dr. B is a chiropractor who specializes in pediatric and prenatal care with Select Health Chiropractic in St. Charles, Illinois. She's been with us all week answering health and wellness questions and giving us fantastic food for thought. Now, if this is your first time joining us, you're going to want to go back all the way to Monday, and you're going to want to listen to the whole week, because we had different questions every day with Dr. B. She's been nice enough to share a lot of great information and some really nice stories. Welcome back, Dr. B. How you feeling?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I have a lot of stories, but we'll save some of those for different days.
We'll have to do a behind the scenes kind of thing, huh?
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, there's something coming in our future. So,
Hey, there you go. Exciting. Be on the lookout for that, no doubt.
yeah.
Oh, so as we wrap up our week-long series, it's been great. You've shared a lot, but, I want to give you a moment, as a divorced woman yourself and a healthcare provider with 15 years of experience that I think I've been going to for almost all of that. You're practicing the holistic wellness approach, and I think, you got a lot of good stuff to share. So I want you to share some of your top advice for people going through the divorce process.
Sure. So, I think as one of the big major points over this week that we've touched on is really just refinding yourself after you've been through the whole process, and making sure that you put yourself first, which sometimes as a parent is very difficult to do, as most of us, not everybody that gets divorced is a parent, but a lot of us are. So just trying to put yourself first again, find yourself again. It's very easy to lose yourself in someone else. And a lot of times before you call it quits, you give possibly more than you should to the other person. And so I think the biggest piece of advice I have is just really refocusing on you. And that's super important. And I've given a host of ways to do that over the last few days. But again, journaling, morning meditation, spending time alone and in your own thoughts, seeing a therapist, as we both have talked about. And we both have experienced positive things from that for sure. Something you mentioned too, and I forgot to mention, is family. Doing family therapy. So that's good. Very good, actually, especially if the kids are in the middle of things, which typically we try to protect that, but they do end up in that to some extent. Getting adjusted to release all that stress that we've held in for Lord knows how many years. And just refocusing on the self-care is probably the biggest thing. So all that's encompassed. And there's a lot of different things you can do, whether you're getting massages, adding the chiropractic. To me, I couldn't imagine not seeing my chiropractor. I probably wouldn't be as nice of a person if I didn't. Again, back to focusing on everything from what you eat to how you treat yourself, and just treating yourself really good. Because I think that we need that after going through that experience.
Absolutely. I mean, there really is I think, you hit it on the head. There's no limit to what you can do after your divorce. There's nobody putting limiting rules on you. There's nobody that's putting you down. You're your biggest fan. You're your biggest cheerleader. You try anything. I'm always like that. Even when it comes to food, it's like, hey, I will try anything once. And if I don't like it, then I may not have it anymore. But I'm not one of those people that's like, well, no, I'm just not going to try that. I think it's important to, like you said, explore once you're done, find yourself, recenter, and be joyful. It's okay to be happy. It was a sad moment. You're going to go through the whole range of emotions. And in the end, it's perfectly acceptable to be happy and move on. Whether you have kids or not tells a whole little different story for you. But the reality is, you're in the spot you're supposed to be at. You just got to figure out the why.
Right. And also, again, want to encourage people to, you mentioned it, explore new things. I mentioned it, hobbies, but really something that you've always wanted to try, just try it. That's going to bring you a lot of joy.
Exactly. And I always say, don't forget about your support group, your friends, and your family, because sometimes you got to reconnect. And if you haven't been there, even I'd like to think you used it through the divorce process, because they're a great resource to lean on it and help you out, kind of thing. As long as you have the right people in place on your support team, let's say. So yeah, there's a whole lot of things that go on, that you want to reconnect even after the divorce, get back in, figure things out, go back to your hometown. I tell you, it's a weird sensation. It's kind of like home. Your parents live there or something still, or you got other family there, and you're kind of like, wow, I haven't been here. But it's a whole different perspective because it's yours. You're not sharing it with anybody. You're just coming back and checking it out, and reliving and kind of getting back to the old you.
Yeah. Finding yourself again, for sure. And traveling, I think, is what you're really probably getting to, whether you travel home or travel somewhere that you've always wanted to go or never been. I mean, a lot of us are gate kept in our unhealthy marriages one way or another. So I think rediscovering yourself is huge.
Yeah.
Self-care, health, and taking those adaptogens, seeing your chiropractor, and if you want to get back to working out and eating healthy and put yourself back on the dating market. Bam Sculpt's a good way to do it. It doesn't hurt. I say it's the way to cheat, but why not?
There you go. Absolutely. Well, this actually does end the week-long series on the Breaking Ties interview series. If you really haven't checked out the previous days of this week, I highly encourage it. I think you're going to learn a lot. I think you're going to enjoy them. They're a lot of fun. Dr. B is fantastic. We do appreciate you coming on the show. And, for our listeners, if you have any questions for Dr. B, I've got her contact information over in the description, and she's happy to help answer questions. She'll do whatever she can to put you in a better place, kind of thing. And with that, I just want you to, keep in mind that divorce is not the end of your story. As Dr. B and I already know, it is the start of your next great chapter. And with that, we will see you in a future episode. Take care.
We want to thank you for listening to this episode of Breaking Ties, Is Divorce the Answer? With Mike Fulkerson. For questions, please reach out to Mike via email in the description or give him a shout at 630-444-1410. And remember to subscribe, like, and follow.